All right, good evening and welcome. My name is Russell. I'm the Buyer and Author Program Coordinator at Magic City Books, and I want to thank you all for spending a little bit of your Thursday evening with us. We are really excited for tonight's event. So there's some big news about the book tonight, and so that's going to come out in just a little bit, but we are so excited to be welcoming Susan Cain for her brand new book, Bittersweet. Magic City Books has been doing virtual events for the last 2 years, and we've done more than 150 of these programs now. Most of them are available on our YouTube channel. I know that many of you are joining us from around the country. Some of you have been with us before at past events. Others are joining us for the very first time, and so we're really excited to have you all here tonight. We are an independent, nonprofit bookstore located in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma, just a couple blocks away from the historic Greenwood Avenue and part of the Tulsa Arts District. We are really excited to be opening up here in Tulsa the Bob Dylan Center. The Bob Dylan Archive is set to open here in just about a month from now, just a couple blocks away from the bookstore. And so we're going to have a lot of events going on that way with authors and historians and folks studying Bob Dylan. April is National Poetry Month, and so we've got a lot of poetry events scheduled at the store these days, and a lot more fun stuff to come, with more getting announced all the time. MagicCityBooks.com is where you can go to find all that information and see the in-person and virtual events that we have coming up. One other thing that just I wanted to mention, because of the audience that we have tonight, we have a special program that we do in the springtime, a book bouquet for moms. And so this is a Mother's Day. You can get 3 books wrapped and shipped to your mom. It's better, they last longer than flowers. They have fewer calories than chocolate. Books make a great Mother's Day gift. And so we've got kind of a selection of those books and a great Mother's Day gift. Or if you are yourself a mother and need to nudge your kids or spouse or somebody else to get you the right gift, that might be a good fit as well. So that's the other thing that we have going on. So wanted to first welcome our special guest moderator. It's been one of the really amazing things about our time in doing virtual events is that we're able to connect people from all over the country and even around the world in foreign countries. This is about the 10th time or so that we're welcoming somebody that's not in the United States at the time we're talking to them. And so we're really excited to welcome Neil Pasricha tonight. He is the author of 9 books and journals, including the Book of Awesome and the award-winning blog, 1,000 Awesome Things. He also wrote a book called The Happiness Equation, which was a 300-page love letter to his unborn son on how to live a happy life. And Neil hosts a podcast and just does many, many, many wonderful, amazing things. And we're just so excited that Neil will be in conversation with Susan tonight. Susan Cain started the Quiet Movement, which revolutionized how the world sees introverts and how introverts see themselves. Her book, Quiet, spent more than 7 years on the New York Times bestseller list and was named the #1 book of the year by Fast Company. Her new book, Bittersweet, Susan reveals the power of a bittersweet outlook on life and why we've been blind to its value. And so we are just so excited to be welcoming Neil and Susan tonight. And without any further ado, we're going to let them get into their conversation. Please welcome Neil and Susan. Thank you both.
Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Neil Pasricha. I am coming to you live from my basement in Toronto, Canada, and it is my deep honor and privilege to be hosting this conversation tonight with all of you and the incredible Susan Cain, author of, as just mentioned, Quiet, which has been a New York Times bestseller for over 7 years, and the brand new, just out 10 days ago, brand new book, Bittersweet, called How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole, which we just found out, I think, yesterday is going to be debuting at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations, Susan. You are once again in the zeitgeist. How are you feeling tonight? What is the energy you're bringing here for all of us this evening?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I'm so happy to see you, Neil. I feel like it's been a while since we've gotten to look at each other even virtually. So that's amazing. And and I'm in a state of kind of stunned amazement over this news. And I don't think the stunned amazement is really wearing off yet. So that's the reality. And and I'm just so happy to see you. And so happy you all are here.
And likely the very beginning of another giant global conversation that, as everybody watching knows, kind of starts in places and conversations kind of like this one. We are hanging out and partnering together with Magic City Books down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I asked just a second ago in the chat, I said, hey, for the 40 people on here so far, what's a word to describe how you are feeling or where you're from? Melissa is calm in Washington, D.C. Rachel is reflective in New Jersey. Susan is tender in Boston. Tracy is anxious in San Diego. Mandy is feeling melancholy. So we've got a wide range of emotions here. And so the question I want to start with, for everybody watching right now, please use the chat, and for you, Susan, as the chat sort of populates, is what would make this a great hour? What would make this a lot of fun? And how would this answer the hopes you have for it this evening? Susan, you have the benefit, unlike all the rest of us, of having done this, I think, every night for the past 10 days. So you can give us some best practices, but also for the people watching at home or on your deck or in your car or wherever you are, what are some wishes you have for this evening? Because what I don't want to do is just do us Q&A, and then it turns out everybody was hoping for the chance to ask questions, or let's hear what the audience wants. What do you want, Susan, and what do we want in order to make this a great hour?
Okay, so I love that you're asking that question for the audience. So I can't wait to hear what the audience says. And I actually really do want to leave the answering of that question to the audience, because as you say, I've done this a bunch of times. My goal is really to, give all of you what you're looking for. But what I want to say is, in a way, what has already happened has exceeded a particular expectation I have, which is that, okay, you and I, we both, for part of our work lives, we do a lot of virtual talks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Often with business or organizational audiences. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but I find very often those talks begin by somebody asking a question in the chat box, just the way you did just now, of like, where are you writing in from and how's everybody feeling tonight? And usually the answers to those questions are always kind of like relentlessly positive. And it's great if everybody truly is feeling happy, as upbeat, as thrilled to be there as they are professing to feel, then God bless, that's wonderful.
Pumped, but ready to go.
But there's like no way that that's true. And so the first person who wrote in tonight said she was feeling melancholic. And I thought, okay, if you now feel like you have permission to say the truth, then like we can maybe all go home.
Yes.
Like the job is done.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, let's keep that going. By the way, before we started tonight, I texted Susan just a few minutes before we started, and I said, maybe you were already going to do this, Susan. I said, bring a bittersweet drink and a bittersweet snack. And what did you bring? And then I'll tell you what I brought, and then we'll ask everybody else if anybody else is drinking something or eating something that goes with the theme of the evening. So what did you bring with you, if you brought anything?
So, I mean, in terms of my snack, I didn't need to bring anything because I'm sitting here in my office, and always in my office, I have this drawer that's next to me. You can't see it, but in the drawer are Bittersweet chocolate chips, which I have loved all my life before I ever thought of writing a book called Bittersweet. That's perfect. My thing. Yeah, and we bonded over our love of chocolate.
I brought those in honor of you.
Thank you.
Kilogram size bag. And what about the drink?
And the drink, I have my Bailey's Irish Cream.
Nice.
Which for those of you who have read Quiet, this is like my drink. This is what I used to have this terrible public speaking phobia, which I have miraculously overcome. But in the days when the phobia was still at work, my husband used to give me this before I would have to go on stage, and it took the edge off a little bit. Yeah. And so we actually, he brought out the Baileys last night when we heard the news about the book hitting #1.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
congratulations. That is a great drink. I brought an orange juice with a lime, which is a little known kind of special drink, but the bitter and the sweet together is a really nice combo.
Huh, never heard of that. I like
So
it.
give it a shot sometime. Susan, for everybody joining that does not have the background, I know everybody's got the book mailed to them all over the place. San Diego, New Jersey, Minnesota, people have the book. What is the heart of this book and this conversation?
The heart of it. The heart of it is that I went on a years-long quest, and I mean years, to figure out why it is that sad music can feel so transcendent. But quickly realized, early in that quest that the question wasn't really only about sad music. It was really about like this broader tradition of bittersweetness that exists in all of our religions and our artistic and literary heritage, and the realization that bittersweetness is one of the best sources that we have of creativity and connection, and, as I say, transcendence. And yet we live in a culture that does not allow us to give voice to that at all. So here we've got these great, superpowers just kind of sitting there, untouched, underutilized, underexplored. And I wanted to shine a light on that.
Thank you very much. By the way, I should let you know, Stephanie's having bittersweet chocolate chips and a huckleberry drink, which I don't know what that is. Huckleberry drink, but it sounds delicious. Barbara is at the movies with my kids. It's amazing. You can multitask like this.
That is really
and
incredible.
Having a popcorn and a diet ginger ale. Mandy is enjoying some bittersweet chocolate afterwards. Tracy is having dinner time, and my husband made me a sandwich, hopefully with some, I don't know, I'm picturing like pickles and mayo, some sort of bittersweet combo on there, Tracy. You used the word bittersweetness in the answer there. How do you define bittersweetness? When you say this untapped power is beside us, keep adding more structure to that word for us and me.
So bittersweetness, it's the awareness and the recognition that joy and sorrow, that light and dark are forever paired. That is what life is. It's these two poles, and it's a deep awareness of the impermanence of everything. And it's also that what comes with all these awarenesses is this kind of really deeply piercing joy at the beauty of the world. And if you want, if you, Neil, or if anybody listening tonight wants to think about how, or ask themselves how prone you are to these kinds of states of bittersweetness, I have a quiz that I developed, and I did it together with two really dear friends and psychologists. You may know them, Neil, Scott Barry Kaufman and David Yaden, who I love. And so we came up with this list of questions, and I'll read to you some of the questions now. I don't know did you take the quiz before?
Yeah, I did. I actually have it. I won't say my answer till you ask the room.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna go through all of it, I think, but I'll just give the room some examples of a few of them. So it's questions like, do you react intensely to art, music, or nature? Have others called you an old soul? Do you love sad music? Do you draw comfort or inspiration from a rainy day? Do you find yourself getting goosebumps several times a day or more? And these questions give you a sense, the idea is not that you would be feeling bittersweet all the time, but just like a certain proneness to that bittersweet state of mind.
Do you feel elevated by sad music? Do you seek out beauty in your everyday life? Some of these I put 10 on, and others I put 0 or 1. I don't get goosebumps. I get goosebumps twice a year. So I put,
serious?
I put 1 on that when my wife gets goosebumps all the time. Having said that, my answer was still in the above 5. I was 6.4.
Right, because you were kind of like
well, I got 10 on I got 10 on other. Do you feel the ecstatic is close at hand? 10. Do you seek out beauty in your everyday life? 10. Do you react intensely to music, art, or nature? 10. But do you know what the author C.S. Lewis meant when he described joy as a sharp, wonderful stab of longing? I put Zero. I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't understand that at all. So yeah. So for those watching, again, that's the folks
Remind
live.
me, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but remind me after to describe to you what he meant. Because
No,
once
no,
you know
no.
what he meant,
Actually,
I want to see if you actually do feel it or not.
well, do you put your hand up? See, at the bottom of the screen it says raise hand. So let's use this as another interactive device. Put your hand up if you would like Susan to expand on this quote. What did C.S. Lewis mean when he described joy as a sharp, wonderful stab of longing? If this is of interest to you, raise your hand. And we have other questions starting to come in, by the way, as this is happening, and other people who are telling us what they're eating. Patricia is drinking a Manhattan with Triscuits and sharp cheddar cheese spread. Boom! Patricia, you nailed it. That is such a, I mean, I don't write the book, but that sounds like such a bittersweet snack and drink. Susan Foley, chocolate mint tea with Lapfroig candy. Laphrooiag. Do you know what that kind of candy is, Susan?
I have no idea, but I love chocolate mint ice cream above all kinds of ice cream. I've never had chocolate mint tea before. That sounds really good.
Oh, it's a scotch. Thank you for the everyone's chiming in. Whiskey, scotch. Okay.
Yes, thank you. And I raised my Baileys too.
Okay, so either the raise hand button did not work, or nobody raised their hand, or I don't know how to read this bottom of my screen. But as I asked that question, other questions started coming in. Susan Foley has thrown, Jennifer McPherson has thrown a question out here. Susan, what was your intention with writing this book? What influence are you hoping that it has on our culture? So you have so far described the heart of the book. You've expanded on the word bittersweetness. Mm-hmm. You've gone into some of the questions that will help people watching, either live or later, understand where they fit on this scale of how bittersweet they are. Now, let's go to Jennifer's question. What was your intention in writing this book? And by the way, as Susan answers, for other people watching, throw questions in the chat or the Q&A, and then I'll keep trying to facilitate as we go so we can make this a true conversation. Over to you, Susan, on intention and hope for the culture, if you have hopes.
Gosh, I mean, okay, I guess my intention started with, you could call this book in some ways like the biography of a feeling, this feeling state of bittersweetness, which I experienced so frequently, so intensely throughout my life, and have been so aware of it being like one of the deepest wells on which I draw in almost everything I do, like in my personal relationships, like love relationships, in my creative work, in everything I do. I feel like this sense of the world as being simultaneously beautiful and broken is the truth, and it's also just this great source, like energy source, in the profound use of the word energy. So I really wanted to understand that, and I wanted to find the other people out there who experience the same thing, and that actually has been like so rewarding already, just in the first week or so since the book has come out. Because like,
is there one story or someone who's come up to you at an event, or is there anything that's come back to you already in the resonance since the book's come out that strikes you as finding the other people?
Oh God, yeah, the letters have come flooding in, and in some ways they echo in the most uncanny way the letters that I got over the last decade in the wake of quiet, like letters of people saying, oh my gosh, this is me, and I finally feel understood, and like I have permission to feel the way I feel. But also other people who have kind of suspected that this state of mind was at the heart of everything they do. So I've heard from a lot of, certainly not exclusively, but from a lot of creative people, like a filmmaker from LA who just wrote to me and said for his whole life he's been walking down the city streets late at night, like on his way home from a party or something, and he would be listening to sad minor key music, and that feeling would come over him, and he didn't know how to describe it. He said his whole life he's called it, quote, that holy feeling. And I don't think he's a religious person or like an explicitly religious person saying this, but there was always this sense that holy feeling was connected to that which drives his art. So that's been amazing. Like so I wanted to understand this, and I wanted to connect with other people who also understood it. And then in terms of the culture, I just feel like our culture would be a lot better off if we made space for these kinds of emotions. We famously now, almost to a cliched degree, live in a culture of, quote, toxic positivity, where it's
Yes.
only acceptable to talk about our positive states of mind.
Yeah.
And what that basically means is that we are not telling each other the truth. And you can't have a functioning culture where people aren't telling each other the truth. But it also means, like, one of the things I discovered from the book is that when person A sees person B expressing sorrow or in a state of distress, person A automatically feels closer to person B. Like it draws those two people together. This is the way humans are designed. Like literally, we have a vagus nerve, which is the biggest bundle of nerves in our bodies, which regulates our breathing and our digestion, and also it also becomes activated when we see other beings in distress. It's like your vagus nerve gets going. So
where is it?
It's in the, I believe it's like the chest cavity, going
Okay.
all the way up to the brain. And it's big and it's fundamental, and all mammals have it. So the fact that this aspect of our bodies that regulates our ability to breathe is also telling us to react to the distress of others, is telling us that this idea of compassion is not just like a nice Sunday school idea that we pay lip service to but don't really mean. It's really deep.
Yeah.
So I just want to give more space for talking about that.
Yeah. And so two things here I want to tie in together. First, you described that filmmaker's feeling in LA of walking into as that holy feeling.
Yeah.
And then earlier I asked who wanted you to expand on the C.S. Lewis quote. And I got a private message from Magic City Books telling me that I totally didn't know how to read so lots of people had over a dozen people had their hands up, and I just had to click this button for attendees to see that. So everybody wanted us to expand on that. So I have a feeling the answer to both of these things is the same. That holy feeling that the filmmaker's describing, and the quote from C.S. Lewis, if you could recite it back to us, or I can pull it up again, because it's in the Bittersweet quiz. Can you expand on that? And here, let me just say the quote one more time for people.
I have it right in front of me.
Okay,
he basically described joy as a, quote, sharp, wonderful stab of longing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that and the holy feeling, those are really related. That feeling when, first I'm talking about the C.S. Lewis quote now, and then we could talk about the holy feeling too. But for C.S. Lewis, that feeling when you see something intensely beautiful and it's so beautiful that it makes you cry because you're just like so moved by the beauty of it, whether it's a work of art or some interaction between two humans, whatever it is. What you could say we're really crying for, the deep-seated reason that we're crying when we see that beauty, is because we all come into this world in a state of longing for a more perfect and beautiful world that we feel like we belong to and have had to leave for a time. And we've expressed this longing in 1,000 different ways. We express it religiously in many of our religions, the longing for the Garden of Eden, the longing for Mecca, the longing for Zion.
Wow, yeah.
The Sufis call it the longing for the beloved of the soul.
Mm.
And then, we have many secular manifestations of it, like Dorothy longing for somewhere over the rainbow, like that other place that we all, we glimpses there, but and this is whether you consider yourself, atheist, believer, secular, religious, it makes no difference.
Every, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings,
yes,
the famous Joseph Conrad.
Yeah, Joseph Conrad. You mean Joseph Campbell? Is that who you're thinking of?
Yes, thank you for correcting me.
It's funny because I was like, yes, no, that doesn't sound quite right.
But you're saying you're reflecting back to us that this feeling is omnipresent kind of in our culture and in our society and in our religions. Now you're saying it's everywhere, but keep taking us deeper into what it is.
Well, what it is the great question. So certainly what it is, and this is the feeling, by the way, that filmmaker calls that holy feeling. And I know this feeling intensely. I get almost every night before I go to sleep, I listen to sort of minor key type music, not so much during the day, more at night. And that feeling comes almost every night. And almost certainly that feeling is the heart of our creative impulses, or at least one of the great drivers of it. Like, why do we create in the first place? It's like we're trying to do something that brings us a little bit closer to the world that we're longing for. And that takes 1,000 different expressions. You know, it could be a rocket to Mars, and it could be making a sandwich for a beloved child. Like there's 1,000 different ways of drawing closer to that world. But it's one of our greatest drivers.
For those of us that aren't as knowledgeable about music, when you say minor key music, are there 2 or 3 songs that everybody knows around the world that you could just point to real quick? Is there a certain Beatles tune or a certain classical music tune that can just make us mentally evoke what you're talking about?
Oh, that's a really good question. And when I say minor key music, I mean, you know, like sad music, bittersweet music. And I will say I actually created a bittersweet playlist. So you can find it on Apple Music or Spotify.
Okay, this is where Magic City Books is going to throw the link in here before the end of the chat somehow.
Yes, please do. Okay. Oh, thank you. I see somebody just said Moonlight Sonata, and I love that you said that, because first of all, that's the perfect example. And second, I actually talk about this in the book. There's this amazing video that went viral of this 2-year-old kid who's at his sister's piano recital, and he's sitting on his father's lap, and he's hearing Moonlight Sonata played not so well for the first time. And this little 2-year-old guy is so moved by the music. He's got like tears streaming down his face. And you can just tell from watching, it's like, he's not crying because someone took his toy away. He's like, he's crying at the music. And this video went viral, and when you watch it, you know why it went viral. It's because it's like people are trying to understand, what the heck is this combination of sorrow and intense beauty that takes us to the depths of our souls. And it does.
Susan Foley chimes in, Jeff Buckley's Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Wonderful track. Michelle Cohen mentions one I don't know, Barbara Adagio for strings.
Right.
The Magic City Book has thrown the Spotify playlist on here. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you know, in the year 2087, that we'll throw that thing down in the look below the video, because we'll put the link down there too. And then
I love, by the way, that somebody mentioned Hallelujah, because a friend of mine read the book, and this is someone who doesn't think of himself as very bittersweet and didn't score particularly high on the scale. He said, but now I understand like why I love Hallelujah so much, and what everybody loves so much about it. Like, why did that become the song that was covered over and over and over again, you know, and played at every American Idol? It's because it's tapping into that particular state that C.S. Lewis was talking about.
Yeah. Side note, I also feel like there's something so powerful about the fact that I first heard Hallelujah as a Jeff Buckley song. Super slow and high pitched, and the different verses. And then when I heard the Leonard Cohen, it came from like a deep one, I'm like, oh, that's the same song. There's something about that too, about the stretching of that song into so many different emotional valences that I think makes it really special.
Yeah. And there's a reason so many were drawn to cover it that way. It like to give it their own personal signature to this like almost sacred song.
Okay, so 2 things here that you've mentioned in the last sort of 2.5 questions here. One is, you say, you know, one thing we don't yet know or appreciate or do well in our society, and it's kind of tied to that original question about the hope for the culture, is learn how to tap into bittersweetness as an energy source. We've talked about, I believe the TED talk that you gave in 2019 that has just released on TED is already going crazy viral. It's called the hidden power of rainy days and sad songs. Is that right?
Yeah. Sad songs and rainy days.
Sad songs and rainy days. So I'm a tactical person. Give me a prescription. Are you saying like get us on the way to use this as an energy source? I don't mean to get life hacky, but just, what are some of the ways we can infuse our creative spirit with these powers, other than it sounds like the obvious, which is playing this music, playing sad music? What else can fill us up using
I mean, so the first thing I'm just going to say is, for people who really have been feeling this way all their lives and hear this and are like, oh my God, that's what it is. The first thing is just to sort of know that, accept it and rejoice in it, which is not something people have been doing. And I know this from the letters that I'm getting already, of people saying, oh my gosh, I thought this was, like in our society, it's said, oh, well, if you're feeling this way, it's a symptom of being melancholy, and melancholy is kind of the same thing as clinical depression. So it must mean there's something deeply wrong if you're feeling these things. In fact, that's what that filmmaker said. He said he would get that holy feeling and then immediately feel like he should disavow it because it was somehow connected to depression. So the first thing is
rid the shame of feeling this way.
Yeah. And not only rid the shame, but like really rejoice in its powers of creativity and connection. In terms of like practical things, one would be to infuse your life in a really conscious way with daily acts of beauty, whatever those are for you. Because that's really what we're longing for at the end of the day. We're longing for, beauty, love, like truth, perfection. So engaging with beauty in a really conscious way is incredibly liberating and stimulating and animating. And I actually got into the habit of doing this as I was writing the book. During the last few years, like when the pandemic came, I found myself falling into this habit of starting every morning doom scrolling Twitter. And it was really bad.
It just doesn't seem like you. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, but I was totally doing it. And I can't remember now how I got the idea, but I suddenly just posted one day and asked people to share with me their favorite art accounts that they follow. And everybody sent them in. And then pretty soon my whole feed was full of art. And so for the whole last 2 years of writing this book, I began every morning by choosing a favorite piece of art and then spending the time to link that art with a favorite poem or quote or idea or whatever. And then I would post it on my social media, and then other people would react to it. And, it often took like an hour to find the right art and the right quote and the right everything and post it up there. So you could say that wasn't so efficient for the writing process, but it actually really was. It centered me into a really deep and creative state of mind, and a state where I felt connected to all the people who I was writing to, because like I've always had, I've always had a sense of the people I'm writing to, and engaging with real people around works of beauty in that way was incredibly transformative. And that's not only something, as a solitary writer, you could sit and do. Like businesses could be doing that, right? You could be opening every day or beginning, team retreats or meetings or whatever with people sharing works of beauty. And we know that it's not only the act of creating art, but the act of consuming it and interacting with it that's elevating and improves health and all kinds of other markers like that's been shown in the research.
Wow. Okay. So, and just as you're talking about that, Barbara Valente chimes in here. Your feed is so lovely. Susan Foley chiming. I'm one of those people who felt it all my life, and they've got a longer. Oh, it's wonderful to have it defined. Rainy days never seem sad to me. It's incubating, cleansing, calming, at the same time, dramatic or even unnerving, in brackets, lightning, flooding. It does not feel sad to me, almost as though I'm living as the world evolves around me, as part of it, as part of the fleeting beauty of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And so, okay, this is to me, the fact that Susan Foley just posted that comment, this is like why anybody would write books. Like the whole reason is just to express something that other people feel. I mean, this is why I read too, like that feeling of a writer put something down, you're like, oh my gosh, I've had that exact same experience and I never really thought to put it quite that way. And then you just have this moment of intense communion between the reader and the writer. Like, to me, that's magical.
So
thank you, Susan Foley.
Yeah, and this whole conversation, look, we're in a room with 45 other book lovers, bibliophiles, having a conversation about this ineffable something. How lucky are we, you know, to be even able to do this, and to make space for this type of conversation. On the sharing of art, by the way, you know, the last time you and I publicly spoke was at the 92nd Street Y in New York, just before the pandemic began, for my podcast, 3 Books. And if I get permission to use the audio, I'm going to release this as a tack on to that conversation, which I've held in my pocket for the 2 years until this book came out.
I know, because when we recorded it, I don't think we thought it was going to be 2 years, did we? Was I like, oh, I'll be done in 6 months? Or what did I think at the time? I can't remember.
I don't know, but that's okay. It's fine. It was funny listening to it. At the beginning, we kissed like cheeks and shook hands, and we sat down, and I said, hey, what are up with those germ people who never hug and shake hands? I said that. It's right before the pandemic. It's hilarious.
Gosh, that's so interesting.
I haven't kissed a cheek in 2 years.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So we're going to suffix that conversation with this conversation. But what you're reminding me of is that the whole point of that conversation is to share formative books, share pieces of beauty, and that let that self be a lever into a conversation. And my first ever corporate job, when I was 21 years old, working in a think tank in downtown Toronto, the lunchtime meetings were always supposed to begin with somebody standing up and bringing a piece of art.
You're kidding.
Or a book to show and demonstrate to the room. And then we started the team town hall. And so it was like, you're on this Friday, Neil, or you're on next Friday. And everybody had to bring a formative book or a music or a little video. And they started the meetings like that. And you didn't know what was gonna happen, but everyone's interest was piqued. And you're making me realize, with the way you've converted your feed to like all art, wow, that's a really natural, easy way for anyone to sort of start to sow this type of energy source into their community or professional or corporate organizations. That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I guess I would say the converse of that idea is to be creating space where it's needed for people to actually tell the truth about what they're feeling. You know, like we were talking about those chat boxes that are always filled with very thrilled and pumped people. And you know, like if a team leader kind of goes first and demonstrates, oh, it's actually okay to talk about feelings in a more nuanced way, you know, that suddenly makes it acceptable for everyone. And I'm not talking about like creating a culture where people feel obliged to divulge their most personal whatever that they're going through, but you know, just to create some space.
And this ties really well with a thought and a phrase that you mentioned heavily in your book, one of my favorite chapters, and a sort of little meringue peak you mentioned earlier that I'm going to tie us back to right now, which is toxic positivity. And so chapter 6 of your book is titled, how can we transcend enforced positivity in the workplace and beyond? And this is related to, of course, you saying, you know, how do we make space for the full gamut of true emotions? A couple questions here. One, I'd love you to define toxic positivity so we're all coming at that term from a level playing field. And second of all, my whole body of work is around cultivating happiness habits, or how do you use the power of, you know, forest therapy, Shinrin-yoku, journaling, reading fiction. These are things I talk about in order to cultivate a more positive mindset, because, hey, I think of happiness as a practice, as a habit. And when I'm happier, I am more creative, and I do have stronger relationships. So how do you define toxic positivity, specifically the toxic part of it? And how does the evolving conversation on bittersweetness fit together with, I think, a pretty robust existing conversation, such as me? Of course, it's people like Daniel Gilbert and Gretchen Rubin, and, you know, that whole world of happiness. How do those two worlds come together? How do you see them entwining in a positive way?
I'll tell you exactly.
Or in the full range of ways they could entwine.
Yeah, no, and I believe there is absolutely no contradiction between, what you or some of the others you just mentioned are doing and what I'm talking about. And in fact, I originally was calling this book The Happiness of Melancholy until people told me that was a really bad title. But it's still called that in my computer files. That's what it's called. And that's because it's not like I don't like feeling sad any more than anybody else does. I enjoy feeling happy just like everyone does. But there's something about this kind of state, like the way Susan Foley was just saying, rainy days never seemed sad to me. That's what I'm talking about. There's something about telling the truth of the full range of human experience that is actually a happiness practice. It's a happiness practice. And we have been denying ourselves that practice. And in terms of all the work of all these other people you've been talking about, there's actually some people are starting to call it a second wave in positive psychology, because, as you know, positive psychology started out a few decades ago with the idea being that before that, psychology and psychiatry had only been about curing mental challenges and problems. And then the idea was, well, what makes human beings thrive? And I would say for the first...
Martin Seligman, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in 1998 to 2000, right? That era.
Yeah, exactly. And, so that's been this kind of incredible juggernaut and boom with all these amazing insights that have come from it. I think that there had been at the beginning of that boom a tendency to assume that if you're wanting to look at what makes people thrive, it's got to be only things like, kind of straight up upbeatness, straight up positivity, straight up optimism, instead of looking at a more kind of shaded and nuanced vision of what human nature actually is and can be. And so there are people who are starting to talk now about a second wave in positive psychology that looks at these more nuanced states and makes space for them and sees them as a source of great generativity.
Yeah, and a comment just came in that makes so much sense. Kristen, you just nailed it in quotes. A good cry.
Yeah.
And another phrase that pops into my mind, it's a bit of I think of it as a bit of a cousin book, frankly, to Quiet, is the book Solitude by Michael Harris, who is a Vancouver-based, really profound philosophical thinker. And that book Solitude really opened my eyes to be really with a butter knife. It's like if lonely is alone and sad, then solitude is alone and happy. And again, that's not really it. That's a pretty overly simplistic word, but that book, as just a side note to encourage other readers who love books to check out, that book really colors in a whole world that I knew nothing about. In fact, I thought going to the movies by yourself automatically meant, that was not you wouldn't do that in a positive state, growing up. That's how I felt, right? And now, of course, I wouldn't go to the movie with anybody. I would give me a break, from my kids. But there's something about, I think, solitude as an ingredient in this as well. And you say second wave of positive psychology. Of course, my itchiness is like, please expand. What else? Where else is this research taking us? And of course, I'm assuming Bittersweet is going to be a big part of it.
I mean, so some of the people who have written on the on the second wave of positive psychology, they're looking at words in other cultures and noticing the way other cultures have made space for this sort of more nuanced view of emotion. So, for example, saudade, which is the Portuguese word for kind of like a longing for a beautiful experience or a love that you may never even have experienced in the first place, and yet you're still longing for it. And that's and saudade is said to be the heart of all Portuguese and Brazilian music. So it's like a very generative thing. And then, like in ancient Greece, the word was potos, and potos meant a yearning for everything good and beautiful and true that was unattainable, but you would still yearn for it. And it was understood in that culture that emotion was generative, So Odysseus in Homer's famous Odyssey,
Yes.
that poem, which is a poem of epic adventure and action, that poem starts with Odysseus weeping on a beach full of longing. He's in a state of potos. He's in a state of longing for his homeland of Ithaca. And it's because he's weeping on the beach with homesickness that he sets sail and begins this adventure. So it's like, that's always been, you see this time and time again in our traditions, that it's always been understood that sense, that kind of melancholic longing is a catapulting generative force.
Ooh, catapulting generative force. It also reminds me of the epigraph in your book. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. From, I don't know what LC, Leonard Cohen. That's a Leonard Cohen song.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
LC. It's for those of us who don't know him, he's Leonard Cohen, but for LC. I get it.
Yeah, because I dedicated the book in his memory, because like he influenced me so profoundly. His music, his poetry, his life philosophy, and you could sum up his life philosophy in that one quote from his song Anthem.
Does it also remind you of that Japanese word, which I'm forgetting, that describes the fixing of broken ceramics with gold?
Oh yeah, kintsugi, I think you're thinking of. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but yeah, the idea that
tell us what that is, and then let's take it back so we can define toxic positivity, because I see there's comments coming in on the toxic positivity side. I just want to color that conversation into. So
yeah, sure.
You just said the Japanese word, which I will not attempt. But what is that?
Yeah, and again, I may be getting it wrong for any Japanese speakers here, but it looks like kintsugi in the way that it's spelled in English. And it basically describes an art form where you take broken pieces of pottery. Like let's say you had a vase and that's broken into pieces, and then you join those pieces together and you attach them with like gold filigree that's visible. Yeah. And so the idea is that the viewer of this that the object has been made more beautiful by the fact that it has been broken and visibly joined together with gold.
What a beautiful metaphor, right? For life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's incredible about that is, so we were just talking about Leonard Cohen. His philosophy, it's really the philosophy of this book. He drew it from the Kabbalah, which is the mystical side of Judaism, where the central metaphor is that all of creation was originally an intact vessel, just like with the Japanese art form. It was originally an intact vessel, a divine vessel that then shattered. And the world that we live in now is the world after that shattering. But those divine shards of pottery of that original creation, they're scattered all around us. And our job, our task on this earth is to pick up those pieces of divine shards wherever we might find them.
Wow.
And yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is not an anti-positive philosophy. This is like a philosophy that admits the truth about the brokenness in things and then is incredibly hopeful about what we can do in the face of that.
Yeah. This reminds me of a good friend of mine, whose name I won't say, but he was working at a really fancy, high-powered consulting company in New York City. And he was experiencing great stress and overwhelm and just inching towards burnout. And so he saw the in-house psychologist, and the in-house psychologist said, every day on your walk to work, on your walk to the office, pick up 3 pieces of beauty and put them on your desk.
Wow.
And he said that the act of doing so was so profound in his life that since leaving the company and doing his own thing, many years later, he still does that every day. And so whether that's like a bright red maple leaf or a perfectly round pebble at the top of like a Manhattan, subway entrance, or he's now keenly looking maybe for what you described earlier as inserting into your life these profound or simple moments of beauty, but because he was told to do that as a prescription to ground and center himself. So then when you get to work, does the work seem that big a deal? No, because you realize that you're like a person floating in outer space on the planet. You get that sense, right?
Well, yeah, and you're also training yourself to find those moments of beauty even in the context of a work day and a job that you don't particularly love. Let's say you can still find those moments. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just trying to eke out a little more productivity from them. Okay, we'll make you happy when you get here, then you'll do better work. On the toxic positivity point, maybe Barbara opens it up for us. They say, when I was going through breast cancer, if I expressed a down day or some less than positive feelings, people all around me did all they could to encourage me to be positive. It was like I was not allowed to be sad or upset or have a rough day. And when I did, those around me feared it so much and forced me to be positive to a fault and at all costs. So for those of us who don't know this phrase very well, toxic positivity, where does it most appear? And how do we inch ourselves back from the precipice of negativity that it, well, what is it? And how do we watch out for this thing? Because you're bringing it to life here for us.
So it appears everywhere. It appears in our workplaces for sure. It appears in our parenting unconsciously. It appears basically in any major cultural institution, just because our culture is so suffused with it. And it's basically the idea
Calvinism,
that,
right?
Yeah, originally it does come from there. I mean, gosh, it took like a whole chapter to explain the history of it. So, but I'm just going to give like a super
we'll take the tweet.
condensed version, the tweet version. Basically, and I'm going to leave out Calvinism from the condensed version, but basically we in the US became an incredibly business focused society. And I don't mean this as a knock on business per se. I'm fine with business. But what happened is that everything started to become a question of whether you succeeded or failed in business, whether you made money or you didn't, whether you kept the money you made or lost it in one of the many economic panics.
Loser commits suicide.
Exactly. Yes. So we start
Headlines
looking
from the
at
Great
everybody.
Depression.
Right. Everybody's either a winner or a loser. Yeah. And in the Great Depression, someone commits suicide. Loser commits suicide after losing all their money. So it's like no longer is a loser someone who has gotten unlucky and lost something. It's like something internal to who they are.
Yeah.
And the more you look at people that way, the more it becomes absolutely intolerable to ever speak of loss or melancholy or the preference for rainy days or anything like that, because to do that is to mark yourself as one of these people who is predetermined in some way to be a loser. And that's the cultural heritage that we have. And you talk about where do you see it, like another huge place. I did a lot of research for the book at my old college alma mater. I just went and talked to students there, and they started telling me about this phenomenon that they call effortless perfection.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which for them is basically
talking about this with Brené Brown.
Yeah. And it's basically the idea that like that these students feel that they're supposed to be, thin and attractive and socially adept and get fantastic grades and everything. And not only should they be perfect in every domain, but it should all appear to come effortlessly, even though everyone knows it can't.
Why is that?
Because they have to mark themselves as winners.
That's still today at current college campuses today.
Oh yeah, very much so.
What is that? That seems like more so than it used to be, though. I mean, when I went to college, everybody had bedhead and sweatpants and smelled funny. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I don't remember that feeling from college. Do you?
I do actually. I mean,
you might go to a fancy school.
I mean, I don't know. I don't remember the term. Like, I don't think that term existed back then. But yeah, I did feel that there was a feeling that everybody was supposed to be very
this is what
shiny
you are,
on the surface.
This is the type of feeling you're fighting against.
Yeah.
This is the type of veneer that you want to help shatter.
Yeah, exactly. Because what's happening, I mean, even before the pandemic, there's been a lot of talk in the pandemic about the rise of anxiety and depression in teenagers and college students, but that was happening even before the pandemic. It's certainly gotten worse since then. But it was happening even before. And, you would see this phenomenon of these college kids who on day one would do an Instagram post of themselves, looking perfect and smiling, surrounded by all their friends, and then die by suicide 2 days later.
Oh,
and like that kept happening.
Oh,
and like you wonder what's the disconnect between this seemingly perfect self-presentation and what people are actually feeling. and whether if there were more of a space opened up to be humanly imperfect, whether there would be you'd let some of the pressure out.
You know what's so interesting is that for a number of years I was going. I live in Canada. I'm in Toronto, Canada. For a number of years I was going monthly on the top morning show in the country, or one of the top ones called Cityline. I was coming in as a someone. I'm worried about the phrase happiness expert. I'd come in and give people tools and habits and ideas. And they started doing a show on Wednesdays called Cityline Real, REAL, where nobody wore makeup.
Oh,
and
interesting.
they wore like casual clothes, and it became like their most popular shows. And I remember I showed up and I wore makeup because I always put on makeup for the TV show. And they're like, "Are you wearing makeup?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Take it off. You're not allowed to wear makeup. It's Wednesday." I was like, "What?" But it's showing some of the momentum in society. There's also that famous Solange, I think, album cover where she's, really, is it Solange, I think, or Macy? I can't remember. Alicia Keys, not wearing makeup, like a really kind of that album cover where it's like a purposeful kind of non-makeup-y done up look. And
I don't know that one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. One of our mutual contacts, Mel Robbins, says that one of the most common questions or comments she gets on her social media is, "I love how you don't wear makeup."
Oh, interesting. And does she do it as a statement, or does she just not really like putting it on in the morning?
I think that's just Mel. Like she's just hanging out at her house taking a selfie kind of thing.
Yeah.
And people like that. They like that there's some sort of veneer puncturing happening when she does it like that.
Right.
I put on a nice shirt and I am wearing makeup now, but maybe I should have had a shiny, sweaty face in order to build connection here.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be extreme about it. Like I think that we love dressing up, and I think it's human to love self-presentation and to engage in self-presentation. So I'm not saying like do away with the whole thing. It's more just like we just need to kind of make space for another frequency that I think has been shut out.
Well, Susan, you have helped us make space for another frequency here tonight. I am going to formally, because I noticed we're at the time, we're going to stick around, but I'm going to formally say huge thank you for the gift to the world. There's this incredible new book. Congratulations on its debut as #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And thank you so much for beginning this global conversation around the bittersweetness of life.
Thank you so much, Neil, for being here with us and giving us your characteristic, amazing energy. And I also want to say a special shout out and thanks to those of you who are participating in the chats. Like, I really loved your comments. I don't think I saw them all, but the ones that I saw were just great, and gave me that moment that, as I told you, is my whole motive for writing in the first place. So thanks for that.